All right, everyone. Thanks so much for your patience. We are back and ready to get started with this really exciting discussion. So just to recap for anyone who's just joined us, today the panel topic that we'll be discussing is XR, the next frontier of the brand-customer relationship. We have three amazing speakers here with us today. Over here we have Mr. Leo Lau. He's a co-founder of Connect AR, an innovative digital marketing platform that uses augmented reality to engage consumers in offline to online digital marketing campaigns. Over here, we have Joanne Chow, the founder of Azalvo, a Hong Kong-based co-creation lab. She has decades of experience in the fashion and retail space, and she's now focused on integrating and applying new technologies into these spaces. Dialing in from Zoom, we have Amit Chatterjee. Amit is the founder and CEO of Shadow Factory, an AR/VR production studio developing content for entertainment, audience engagement, and digital marketing. So today we'll be looking at the topic of AR/VR fashion from a couple of different perspectives. So we want to start out by looking at it from the pre-sale perspective, and then we'll move on to the point of purchase, and then we'll move on to after-sales support. We're very lucky to have with us three people who are very experienced in very different aspects of this topic, so we'll have an all-around view into the in-depth nitty-gritty details of the application of this technology and branding. And because some of the world's most valuable brands have invested into this technology, we'll also get into the details of, how brands should develop AR/VR applications for consumers and what's important to consider. So let's kick this off. The first question we have for you today goes to Amit. So to get us started, could you please start by defining XR for us? So what does it mean within the framework of AR, VR, mixed reality, and how does it work? How does it differ?
So XR is just a general term to refer to all of these things. There's a lot of buzzwords in the industry, and they're all moving really, really fast. I remember when mixed reality became a term, I was literally on a flight. It didn't exist. I got off of the flight, and it was all over the papers, and it was like, yeah, mixed reality headsets. And I was like, oh, I guess that's a new thing we got to be aware of. So virtual reality is, you put on a headset, and it's like Ready Player One. You're transported to a whole other environment, a whole other world. Augmented reality is, you use either like a mobile phone or a device as a lens, and you can still see everything on the other side of it. Like, you can still see your friends, you can still see the world around you, but it projects data and holographic content into that space. And then mixed reality is somewhere in between, where, mixed reality, at the time that term came out, that was just at the launch of the Microsoft HoloLens and the Meta 2, and they were very good at tracking surfaces and like actually knowing spatially where you were and how to project items onto those spaces. So like, you could actually put a holographic ball on a table and let it roll off the table with physics. And that's what mixed reality was all about. And then you've got other things like 360 video, which is, those videos that we see prevailing a lot on YouTube and on Facebook now. There's another thing that was called volumetric VR, which is like the ability to have live action video from artifacts from like a completely immersive capture. So you could actually see somebody from every angle while they're doing like a live performance or something like that. I believe AR and MR are going to merge into the same thing, because Apple and Samsung devices have gotten very good at, these open frameworks of how to do tracking and plane tracking. So I think the concept of what mixed reality is just going to merge back into AR, and we'll come back down to there's VR and there's AR, and all of that's represented by XR as an immersive tech or immersive reality.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that in-depth description of what's going on in this space.
Yeah.
We're going to dig into how these technologies are being applied a bit later in this discussion, but we're starting off with how that's applied in the pre-sale part of this journey. So this question goes to Joanne. So the customer journey often starts right from the beginning of the supply chain, for example, in warehousing, or like just ensuring that the product gets to the customer in the right way. So can you tell us a little more about, in pre-sale, how are these technologies that Amit just described used? How do they interplay? How do they improve efficiency and reduce returns?
So in the lifestyle space as well as fashion space, it's been applied to design and develop as to whether or not this piece of furniture fits a space, fits this room, and is appropriate. So we see a lot from I guess the end product to the development of it, and we've seen how people compress files into virtual space and develop to design. So back in the days, you had to do it through CAD drawings. Now you can develop into CAD drawings that you can apply and other people can approve. So it's made it more seamless. Because of COVID, no one's been able to interact personally. You've had to use it through either both AR or VR to help people appreciate what they're seeing and would purchase in an actual store in a showroom. We see that apply to a few big box retails, both in Europe and US, and it's quite interesting to see the end products. On the fashion side, you also see a lot of virtual garments being developed and designed. Last year, just LinkedIn alone, you see a lot of 3D designers that have kind of come about because they've been able to apply design in 3D manner on a virtual manner. So you see a few technologies, programmers that were not previously in fashion and lifestyle space, entering into space and helping people aid them during this pre-sale journey in order to because you can't really receive actual products now because shipping is very difficult. So you see virtual products being tried on around the world. So that part has been quite interesting both for fashion and lifestyle, which we've not used previously.
So that part must have really grown during the pandemic.
Oh yes, exponentially. So I tell people before pandemic, no one was a 3D designer. Now everyone's a 3D designer. Before pandemic, no one knew how to do virtual showrooms. Now everyone's looking at how to do a virtual showroom. So it's really changed how we consume art, music, experiences from our homes, and to appreciate what people have created in another part of the other.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And another part of this pre-sale process is the marketing aspect of it and how you generate hype around the product launch, which has most likely been quite difficult given that a lot of people have just been at home and a lot of your big budget marketing avenues have been blocked off because of that. So Amit and Leo, both of you work on providing AR solutions for marketing or entertainment purposes. So can you discuss, what that experience is like and how, what the challenges are associated with developing these kind of products? Maybe Leo.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, because this is a quite interesting question. AR campaigns actually is slightly different from a lot of different digital campaigns because it can actually vary significantly in terms of the cost and the time. So you could, because one of the key things is content, right? So nowadays, all the consumers are spoiled, right? So everyone, when you talk about AR, VR experiences, people are expecting, really fantastic, glamorous content. But of course, those 3D contents actually take more time to produce than just 2D graphics content, right? So we have to first come into the meetings to basically get a good sense of what kind of scope the customers are expecting, right? So helping them to scope out the campaign in terms of the cost and time is one of the key challenges that we have to face. Now, the second also very important aspect is that I put them together because they all intermix together in terms of the interactivity, the reachability in terms of how big of the target audience that you can target. So because these two things really mix up together and really affect the scope of the campaign, right? And again, because of these campaigns are so new, a lot of the customers, they either have no idea what to expect or they have very high expectations. Mm-hmm. So we have to really help them to once again scope out what is their expectation. So the expectation has to be in line, otherwise, the project is not going to be successful.
Right. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Is that something you would agree with, Amit, that managing expectations is a huge part of it?
100%. I think, you either get the clients who are struggling to imagine their brand in this new medium, and so you really have to encourage them to think big and think broadly about things. Or you have the clients that are open to the new ideas and have some very extravagant new ideas, and they're like, well, we can do this in a couple of weeks, right? And it shouldn't be that expensive, and it shouldn't be that hard, and like, just because I want it to be easy and it looks easy, it should be very easy, right? And like, we actually had a request for a project the other day, and one of the client who was asking was just like, yeah, normally the way that you do AR for this thing, you know, requires like a paper printout for the tracking, and like, we don't want to do that. So can you just make it easier? And I was like, yeah, but that's harder to do. You understand? He's like, yeah. And so then we came back with a quote, and he was like, why is this so expensive? Why is this so hard? Why is this going to take so much time? And I'm like, well, you asked for literally the most cutting edge thing in the industry today. Like, this hasn't been done yet today, as of today. And he was like, oh okay. So I think definitely that's a key aspect of it. I think for us, you know, we're very story driven in the way that we approach solutions for clients. So we always try to get into like, are we really servicing the brand DNA? Is this really providing value to the end customer? We try to stay away from activations that are kind of gimmicky. There's a lot of brands out there that are still experimenting with this technology. And so as a result, as a way of being careful and not committing too many resources or being perceived as being wasteful, they'll try to just commission one-off experiments. But the problem is the one-off experiments don't tie well to the brand story, or engage value to the end user. So it's hard for that to be successful in the first place. And it's hard for the end user to feel like they're going to go brag about that and talk to their friends about it. Normally there's an AR experience, I'm sure we've all done them, where it's like, okay, it was cool for 2 seconds. Now what? And it's dead at that point. So we try to help our clients stay away from doing that kind of stuff and try to integrate it into their campaign, integrate it into their CRM cycle and how they engage customers. Why should customers care about this? And why should they come back and share this with their friends?
So Joanne, did you have like being as someone who is kind of on the other side of the process sometimes, working with like external parties to develop some of this tech, is that like
I am the one that is wondering why. So you are correct. I think when I started to work with people who have been designing 3D garments, it takes them 1 day to design one garment, and that's already efficient. Prior to that, I didn't realize it takes so long to do that. And if you have a collection, you need more than 30 garments to be placed in the store. It actually takes a team of people to design enough garments to be in a virtual AR environment. So therefore, there's a few parts which I had to learn, which is interior design of that space, which is you need an interior designer. So you really have to find someone to design the space that you put the garment in. Then you have to have a virtual garment, and then that person needs to understand the material that's entering. And the two have to understand each other in order to be able to develop it into, it's not like you can have an actor and have a film studio right away. You actually have different parts, and different parts have to have a relevant language to understand each other. So I think expense alone, it's also time and educating each other what these means. So it's not open platform yet. And so I think that's why it's very difficult for people to dive in and say, okay, I can open a store tomorrow, or open a virtual showroom tomorrow, or augmented showroom tomorrow, because there's a lot of different parts involved, and people may only know one part that they're good at. And to have everyone come to a table, it takes more than building a physical collection for clothing or for furniture and stuff like that. So yeah, as a client, I am disappointed, but I realize my expectations are unrealistic because everyone is also trying to know what to do right now at this moment in time.
Right, which is one of the key, I guess, this is something that comes part and parcel of working with like the frontier technology, really, just trying to understand its limits and push them. So yeah, so let's get into some kind of examples of this being put into successful practice, because Amit, I thought that was really interesting what you mentioned just now about how things can be gimmicky and they're cool the first time you look at them, but then you're kind of like, has this actually had an impact on sales or actually had an impact on the brand consumer relationship? So maybe like You know, since you mentioned a couple of examples earlier, virtual fitting and stuff, can you think of other like examples that actually had a tangible impact?
We see now lipstick colors are developed virtually based on imaging search. So let's say I see someone with a really nice handbag, then you want it to be exactly the same color as that handbag, and you have product matching to do so. I think that's really revolutionized how we look at color, look at products, look at engaging with garments. So we do see fitting completely change. Back in the days, you had to go into a store with a fitting mirror. Now your home mirror can be your fitting mirror. I think that's really evolved into a transition from just a product into experience, into engaging, wanting to know more. So it's all evolving. And because the last 2 launches, as I understand, like you said, Microsoft, Samsung, and Apple, it's really changed the way it can be applied and to be used by different retailers, different brands, and even influencers. You know, your avatars. I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but at least I'm kind of excited that it's changed in the last 18 months.
Definitely. And I mean, your like the work that you do with Connect AR and SnapPop is kind of different in terms of it's not in the design side of it, but it's in like really putting interesting like gamified applications that try to engage consumers, right? So what like in terms of your experiences so far with building out these kind of applications of AR, what have you found to be some of the most successful and what works best when trying to push these kind of solutions?
Right. I think we kind of fortunate and unfortunate. We've been in this area for over a year and a half. So we have done quite a number of AR campaigns. So at the very beginning, it was when we phase out products that I mentioned before. And but I would have to say, when looking back, it is actually not too surprising. So the 2 factors actually comes out of all the campaigns that we have done before, creating most successful campaigns. One is a captive environment. So if you have a captive environment, then for example, events that will lock people up for 3-4 hours, right? Then obviously, you know, we have over 93% of participation rates because everyone's sitting around doing nothing, right? They're looking for things to do. Thank God you have an AR interaction for me to play. So that no wonder if you have a captive environment, this kind of engagements drives really good results. Another factor again is no-brainer incentive. So if you have really now it doesn't have to be high values, but it has to be connected with the brand or the gameplay. So the whole experience makes sense. The whole experience actually produce a coherent meanings at the end. Because now, keep in mind at the beginning of the campaign, when the consumers walk over, they definitely would not know exactly what you're trying to do, right? It could be a fraction of a second, whatever catch their attention, then they will make a decision and say, okay, I'm gonna stay, I'm gonna spend a minute or 2 to see what this is all about. So having an incentive is one of the key things that can drive people catch their attention, right? So again, it doesn't have to be high value, but if the incentive matches, say the IP that's in the backdrop or the interactions, if you are trying to do a selfie with an AR selfie character, for example, then if the whole thing come together, makes sense, and there's incentive, then we find those campaigns work out really well. Mm-hmm. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention is, so when we look at these 2 factors and we ask ourselves, so does it mean AR doesn't really matter? We don't have to do AR at all. We can just do good incentive campaign within a captive environment and everything works out. And what we find out is that it's obviously not, because what happens is, like Amit said, that AR is not a hype anymore, right? You cannot use AR to attract people and say, hey, I'm doing AR, so it doesn't matter what it is, to come over. No, AR almost becoming a standard. If you look at the percentage of the digital marketing campaigns, the type of digital campaigns being done in US and Europe, the percentage of AR kind of related to AR actually significantly increased in the last 18 months. So what happens is now it almost becomes the first kind of inactions that advertisers are looking for to do, right? So that is basically your entry level. Now, on top of AR, the question is how do you make it more fun and how do you make it, how do you incentivize people to play? So people are not going to come in to play it if it's AR, but obviously people expect, kind of inactions that would comes out from the environment.
Yeah, definitely. And it's about finding that balance between like virality and like something that actually serves like a longer term-ish purpose or leaves a lasting impression in the consumer's mind, right?
Yeah.
So Amit, I guess you've worked on both of you have worked on very different types of projects using AR, whether that's packaging, billboards, games, etc. What have you found that actually has like the most impact, or like I mean, just can you tell us about a case study?
I mean, we cover a number of industries, and we cover high tech, we cover fashion, we cover entertainment, we cover gaming, and the projects that we tend to execute for people are usually high stakes in that they're trying something new and it's a critical issue for their business. Either we're doing some form of their roadmap for their digital transformation for the company and it's critical to their survival, or we're creating a new line of business for them and they're trying to become more future forward, or we're just really ushering them into a level of automation and digitization that they've never seen before. So, for example, we're working with this one company in Hong Kong that's a listed company called Evergreen Products. And historically, they've been a manufacturer for wigs, like human hair wigs. And since 1962, their stock ticker is 1962.HK. And their technology hasn't moved since 1962. It's a family-owned business. The current CEO inherited the business from his father, and he plans to send that along in his family and keep the business growing. He's very passionate about the company, but really their whole business has been wholesaling wigs internationally around the world, and that's it. But he came to us and was like, how do I move this to the next level? I want to diversify what we're doing as a business and be more digital, and I don't know how to do that with this business. So we're currently in a phase with them where we're helping them build a direct-to-consumer e-commerce platform that'll be global. So anybody around the world can order these wigs, whether that's a real wig or a costume wig or whatever. And these guys produce like one of the highest quality, wig pieces like in the world. But using augmented reality, you'll be able to try the wig on before you buy it on e-commerce. So like you go to the website, look at the wig, and then using your phone or some other display piece, you'll be able to try the wig on, take a photo, share it with your friends, get your opinion before you buy the wig, have your friends come try it on, that sort of thing, and do that. So we're in the kind of the middle of this project. We're just in the prototype phase, and we're going to be launching that later this year with these guys. But that's an example of we're driving real impact for that business and taking them into the future and opening up this whole digital social economy to them, which they've not had any access to historically for that business. Another company that we've done some stuff for in the past is, we've done some work with Singapore Airlines, where we created an augmented reality coloring book for them, where it's a regular coloring book like any kid would use. You can see all the case studies on our website. It's a regular coloring book like any kid would use. So you color it in with your crayons, and then you flash our app over it, and the characters come to life with your coloring. So it's automatically personalized. It's my character. I get to play games with this character and solve puzzles. And the way that they frameworked the coloring book was the content was sponsored by the Singapore Zoo. So the characters are from the Singapore Zoo. So the idea is I get on a plane, I buy this before I get on a plane and go to Singapore. And the characters I'm playing with are characters that are at the Singapore Zoo. And if I complete all of the activities, I'll get a voucher to get a free tour of the zoo or whatever. So the zoo is driving foot traffic. The kids are staying quiet on the plane, which is what everybody's hoping for. And it's a very personalized experience. And if you take a step back and look at that, we created a whole new line of business for Singapore Airlines, and it's a two-sided marketplace. One is the retail aspect of it. The kids have a reason to keep coming back. And the other part of it is the venue sponsoring the book, because they can keep updating the content of the book and scale it. So these two aspects of it are things that they can grow, totally adjacent to their aviation business and all that stuff. So
that's fascinating. That actually gets at the heart of like a lot of, I'm sure you guys would agree, like one of the biggest things that needs to be addressed today is personalization, and that's a huge trend driving e-commerce today. So from your perspective, John, like in terms of, I guess, a couple of things actually. The other one is collaborating with other parties to make something work. So like, can you share any like case studies or any examples of, you know, how this is coming into play in the wider kind of fashion, lifestyle, retail industries?
Well, I guess last year was a good example for two of the lifestyle brands that I carry, where, you know, we were thinking furniture and accessories is really hard to be virtual, but we had to develop virtual showrooms. So we had people come and photo shoot our stores and then be prepared to have virtual appointments with people in the event they can't come to physical store and choose things that they like. Then we, of course, not just through physical retail photos, we had to create with AI technology voiceover, so that if you didn't see us during those hours, you can see us during non-work hours and speak to, you know, an app to discuss what you want to purchase. So we see that more so in China than in Hong Kong, but it was very much applied. And then you know, even the technology companies were like, oh, can we test it out on yours? Because, you know, we think there's room to grow. So last year alone, we tried a few of these different virtual reality stores, you know, AI's human speech introductions. Then we also had to find programs to design a whole entire studio for people, because we couldn't physically put out a display where people could visit because of social distancing. So that's how I've learned so much about. But at the same time, when you guys talked about AR glasses and the way in which you use them, museums, you know, we physically did, when social distancing improved, go to a physical one, and you actually see a lot of great artwork been developed with great technology, and that's quite evolved in China, more so than Hong Kong, because I guess the tech is quite advanced there with much more affordable gear, hardware. But yeah, it helps you bring it to other people. So I have seen sales actually, you know, climb a little bit higher because of all these tech that we've added into the shopping experience for both brands. And so despite the initial investment, it's paying itself off over time. So yeah, it's been fun. But like I said earlier, because there's different parties involved and one may not get it right, you have to interview a few to understand what parts you need with what type of software and hardware to actually get into commercialization. So I applaud everyone, you know, in the retail and space working with, you know, technology specialists to develop something that's truly valuable, because it's hard. You know, people never thought of buying furniture and accessories online. Now they try to because they can't leave their homes. But not knowing what color it is, to be able to use color apps, you know, to be able to apply that, it helps, you know, and then to have a reference we can communicate with each other based on imaging, it's a huge change. So what we see other hoteliers, people applying is not just imaging for clothing to best match now, it's imaging for bigger pieces and best match and delivered to the homes with 3 to 6 weeks lead time, because that takes that long to create. And so
right, to create it from scratch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's quite a big change from pre-COVID.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So since you mentioned kind of China tech being a little more advanced and the headsets and gear being more readily available, I kind of want to turn to the tech side of it. So Leo, can you tell us a little more about, I guess, what kind of needs to change on a like in order for things to become more mainstream? Because, you know, AR applications have become a little more lightweight, obviously. Like we all had Bernie Sanders in like our Instagram stories for like a while back there. But these are not what we're talking about here. We're talking about much bigger, much heavier programs. So what does that mean for consumer hardware development in terms of GPU like power and like I guess internet power as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely this is, I believe things are going into two directions. Okay, one direction is definitely you have more advanced hardware and more capable hardware. Devices, beforehand, we don't have a lot of devices with depth sensor. Now we have more devices coming out with depth sensors. Now depth sensors plays a big role in terms of experiences, because with depth sensors, we can have a better understanding of the environment. So we can do actual MR, because and one of the key elements of MR is occlusion. If without depth sensor, you cannot do occlusion. So, so definitely you have hardware going into those directions with 5G, with depth sensors, with more powerful GPU. But at the same time, you have Web AR, right? You have a good group of consumers that they're still using older generations of Android devices, right? And they don't have the luxuries of all this wonderful hardware, but they still demand AR experiences. Now, most importantly, are the brands. Most of the questions I'm sure Amit got that a lot is like the brands are saying, I want the best user experience, the most complicated gameplay on Web AR.
Right.
But obviously you cannot, because now not only the hardware, but also the infrastructure, the architecture, everything's running in a browser. So the computation power, regardless of what hardware you're running on, is already have a big disadvantage. Also, there's a lot of limitations in terms of programming. So I think we will continue, like this gap will continue rising because of more and more capable hardware devices coming out. But again, Web ARs are getting their names more well known into the brand's names, so they're demanding it. So we have to struggle between the two in terms of the future development of the AR experiences. Somehow we have to provide experiences that can live in both worlds. Like right now, we have a project working with the Museum of Art, and it has to do with physical sculpture. That is really interesting idea. Art sculpture, physical art sculpture, and digital experiences. Again, we face a similar questions. Like, okay, we want the greatest and the best experience running on the best hardware, but then hold a sec, then that means only a portion of the population can enjoy it. What about the rest? Right. So we have to face with that. Now, so that is an open question. So I think Amit and us, we have to look at how can we best solve this problem and move the technology forward. But the other between these two, I think one element is emerging, and we're really big on it. We bet a lot of our resources on it. We have 2 open platforms developed for it. It's what we call DIY AR. So basically, it's do-it-yourself AR. It solves one of the biggest problem is, like I said before, content is really hard to create, right? And it's expensive. Now, what if we can put part of this capability onto the hand of the advertisers, of even the user themselves, making them to do the hard work for us, right? Then that would be really, really fun, right? So this DIY AR, I think, is the area where we believe we can move this AR experience forward, together with better hardware, together with more a wider platform using Web AR.
Right, so almost like a SaaS platform, like kind of like.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. So, well, I guess now going into the kind of after sales side. So we've kind of talked about the virtual try-on side, and we've talked about furniture and how it can be kind of projected into a space.
Yeah.
But now let's kind of talk about user manuals and figuring out how to put IKEA furniture together, for example. So Amit, can you tell us, based on the work you do customers usually take well to this kind of after-sales support, or do people just kind of want to sit down and look at the user manual?
So the way that we work with customers is that we'll go through, in the process of building a solution for them, we'll go through a period of usability testing, and we'll do that with, our actual direct customer. We'll have them recruit a focus group of their direct customers who will end up using it, and we'll actually do a few mock run-throughs so that we can streamline as much of the interface aspect of it as possible. So by the time it's actually available, public, and out there, we've actually streamlined the user experience as much as possible. So it's much more intuitive, and ideally they shouldn't need too much of a user manual or instructions to run it. It should be kind of right out of the box, ready to go. We do a lot of stuff like that where, let's say we package something for an Oculus headset. We'll actually go in and lock down the headset, so the only thing you can do is run our software. So, if that gets used as like a trade show experience, or for like a private curated gallery experience where someone has a high profile client and they want to produce, a VR showroom for them, we can actually create like a curated experience on the headset, lock it down. So the only thing that headset runs is the showroom, and send that back and forth and things like that. So we have a lot of tools around that to make sure that it's very hard for people to run away and do things they can't do. One of the experiences we have is with a company called ThyssenKrupp. They're the #2 elevator manufacturer in the world. And we built a VR showroom for them that they're now in the process of deploying globally across all of their offices, and we're helping them do that. But one of the things we gave them was, we gave them a content management tool so they can actually update the showroom whenever they want. If they have a new line of products, it's a new year or whatever, they don't need to come to us. They can actually go to a web portal and drag and drop the new assets and hit go, and it'll populate a brand new showroom for them. And they can do that by the territory they're in, by language, by the person who's going to be running it, and all that. And that's the way that it stays maintained. And then from the customer experience standpoint, we designed it so that when their customers are wearing the headset, the salesperson who's walking them through has a companion app, so they can chaperone the VR experience for the customer as well. So they can actually see where they are in the experience and be like, oh, hey, let's go back a couple levels, and hit a button on their tablet, and they can send the customer back. Or they can be like, oh, hey, you missed this thing. Take a look at this, and press a button, and it'll highlight an object in the room for them and be like, hey, take a look at that. And that way, it's easier for the customer to understand what they're doing, what they're looking at. They don't get disoriented as easily, and they don't start running around, and breaking the experience and that sort of thing. And then the other aspect of that is, because it's network-based, theoretically you could do that across territories. So I could be in New York and moderate somebody's customer experience in Hong Kong or in Los Angeles or whatever. Yeah, so that's generally how we approach it. We try to get the training done before the launch, so that's minimum.
Yeah, I mean, having the salesperson involved in the client's journey is definitely one way to enhance the brand customer relationship, I guess. Like, just to directly have them involved while they're experiencing this. Is that a tool that you think would be something you'd want to implement across like your brands or the brands that you work with?
To keep it simple, you really have to think about, if it's too technical, people won't use it. So I think, people like to learn a little bit more. They're curious, but beyond 3 steps, you'll be on your own. My husband, we have a kids model, and I think he's not touched it because the instruction manual is small. So even though it's a very inexpensive toy, it's still sitting on the counter. So really, how do you make it accessible where someone can just press play? That's why I really like, when he mentioned Real Player One, I was like, oh, I really like that show because it really makes it very simple. You can imagine being an alternative reality where everything can come to life in both, gaming, living, dressing, consuming. It's great, And there's no manual in that movie to tell you that's how you actually, apply those gears. So that's why I don't think after sales with any instructions would be relevant, because China basically assumes you know how to use all their apps and be able to do your own KOC videos and be able to sell. So commercialization takes certain sort of training, but they want everyone to be able to commercialize, to learn how to do so in a very simple manner. So yes, COVID, you've seen everyone take fewer steps, and that is fine. Is it good or bad? It makes it more accessible. And making it more accessible makes some technology change push faster. So in a way, I do think we'll see more and more changes because it's that direct.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of it has to do. Definitely, simplicity is the most important thing. But I think we, as a developer in the technology side, has already been used to it. Especially those who has a lot of experiences in the mobile industry, because in the mobile software, there's no menu, right? There's no menus for that related to apps, right? Unlike 20, 30 years ago, desktop software comes with this type of a menu, right? With all the mobile apps, you just download the app and you just start using it, right? And there's literally no single page of manual to teach you how to use it. And a lot of this augmented reality, VR experiences are delivering on mobile devices, handheld devices, and so a lot of those developers come a long way from forcing themselves to create a user interface that is so simple that do not require any menus to drive it. So I think this is one of the key reasons that have prepared the community of developers to do a really good job. But on top of that, I think it does VR, AR, it does impose a particular difficulties because of the extra dimension of AR, where it's not just it's the virtual world, it's the virtual world and the physical world coming together in terms of the user interface design. So that has a lot of new patents being filed in terms of how to create user interface to allow users to navigate in the virtual and the physical world together. But I think that absolutely this is one of the key given expectations from the users that all the software, all the users experiences do not require a menu. So it has to be designed this way.
Yeah, the importance of user experience to us, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So as we've established through this discussion, it looks like brands are investing in building almost every kind of application available to help brands sell products. So to really kind of bring it all back to the topic at hand, maybe we can go one by one and really just talk about what you think is the key here. What is the key to really helping brands connect with customers and keep them coming back? What's the key to stickiness here? Maybe Joanne, you want to share your thoughts first?
It might be better to go last. I'm the least technical of all of the three speakers here. It's very difficult.
Oh,
yeah.
Sure.
Okay, sure. So, well, let me go first then. To me, I think content is king. Interactions, technologies are what enabling the content to connect with the consumers. So, how to make the content available in the interactions that is fit the campaigns is the most important thing. And how to do it in a timely fashion and cost-effective way is, I think, what's going to drive the industry and the impact of this technology to the speed that we wanted to achieve at. So if we can have ways to create content in a much faster way, then I think the adoption will grow exponentially. And that means because the time to market will be a lot quicker, and the cost to develop the campaign will be a lot lower. So everyone will jump onto the bandwagon, and then the rest is history.
Right, you can capitalize on trends while they're really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Great. Amit, anything to add to that?
I really agree. I think, content and context is king. It's very important, and how you engage with people. I think a lot of people that are in the XR industry come from maybe a broadcast or television background versus a digital background. And the difference there is how you engage audiences. The broadcasters are used to, I've got a TV channel, people come to me. So I'll create content, people will come to my content. And the digital people are more used to like, oh, our customers and our demographic, they're here, here, and here. We need to go be in front of them where they live. So that's actually a very important distinction to keep in mind as you're delivering these solutions. They need to be in front of the potential users or your potential demographic. And then for me, ultimately, everything comes down to storytelling. Like you can produce anything that's like super high tech, latest and greatest, whatever. But if there's not a real value there, if there's not a really good story there, people won't care. You know, we need to be always engaging with things that people will care about, want to try out, want to talk about afterwards, and want to share with their friends. That's really the key. So,
Absolutely.
I guess if you come back to me and I summarize that, is I'll ask if it's relevant. Because when I do embark on this journey where we should do a virtual showroom, we should do 3D clothing, I think it doesn't help you understand why you're doing this, what is the relevance of it. So while you definitely need the content, how you apply it, and is there a gap? Because I always ask, if you can't fill that gap within the time frame, what's the point? Fashion we know very well. It's like you miss spring altogether.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's definitely from my side, the other end, not techie part is what purpose are you serving? And knowing that and finding the right people to work with is very important. I do think there are lots of great programmers out there, but how do you make it adaptable? How do you make it so that it can be repeated? It's very important. Your ability to make others to be able to use it themselves, and they can commercialize, they can engage, they can grow, means they evolve as clients and they evolve as consumers of the client's products. But if you don't have that, then you're no different from an e-commerce store. So I think you want to differentiate yourself during this journey.
Absolutely. It's a great note to open this up to Q&A.
Yes.
Cindy, do you mind helping us out with that? Can you see? Okay. So this question has come in from an anonymous attendee. Are there any other applications for AR, VR other than virtual try-on for fashion?
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah. Amit, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, take your pick. I mean, there's, obviously entertainment, video games. You can do guided walkthroughs of specific spaces. You can do gamified or geolocation-based experiences as well, where maybe your AR and VR content only kick on in a certain location, certain venue. We're working on a number of different types of projects right now, ranging across one, we're like trying to bring a music concert online with VR and AR assets. We're trying to, like I mentioned, the wig company. We're also talking to an industrial tech company about, they have a manufacturing process that has a lot of high stakes quality assurance checklists that they have to go through to produce the materials that they produce. And so one of the use cases is that using VR and AR, they're going to be able to track in real time the quality assurance process and like how much of the machinery has been produced, what quality it's at, what's passed, what hasn't passed, and actually in real time be able to dial in and see somebody or a technician working on the equipment and seeing how they're doing with the checklist. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can use it for. I really believe, and I say this to everybody, the way the world is evolving now, there's this convergence of digital and technology and entertainment and productivity, and like we're all getting closer and closer together with it. And if you think about things like not just digital, but like IoT and blockchain and AI and like all this stuff and all this big data and everything kind of slamming together, VR and AR will be the interface for these things in the future. It'll be how we interface with all of these things going forward. So it's a very exciting medium that definitely applies to a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have another applications to add is we applied AR into fashion design in Hong Kong Design Institute, where we basically bridge between the gamifications and the design elements together by allowing designers to design on 2D cutout and then transform digitally into 3D model and do actual catwalk and modeling, so that the designers can really, they don't have to, let's say, make a real life size fabric and then create a custom garment out of it. They can just use a small patch and then do the digital transformation and create a real life size. Yeah. So the it's something somewhere between gamifications and the actual design process.
Right.
We've been teaching, also engaging AR with AI so that your design can be more, I guess, more depth. There's more interest, it can evolve. So one design can be multiples of 10 more versions, and that can be changed. So I agree, the interface of it is very applicable as the technology evolves. It depends who applies it to their day-to-day use, so it makes it easier for you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, looking at the interplay of these high technologies is very interesting, because everyone's also talked about gesture control, so for as one example. So I think we have time for one more very quick question. So this one's from Timothy. How do you see 5G affecting AR, VR in the fashion space? Any volunteers to take this one?
Yeah, I think edge computing is one of the element of 5G, meaning that you can put a computer closer to the consumer's handsets. And so having this capability, meaning that you can transfer much more content in terms of the, we're talking about a lot of different designs of the dresses, we're talking about a lot of different fabric content. We even can be talking about doing the renderings off the device and then ship the image back to the mobile device. So having this capability of edge computing really opens up a lot of new possibilities for augmented reality and on fashion as well.
Absolutely.
For us, on the manufacturing side, we look at the 5G application on how it can be used for people to really understand the whole manufacturing cycle, where the wastage are, where the changes are, and where the errors may have occurred. So I know people don't think about AR and VR in that context, but smart factories allows you to think of it in that way without physically being in the supply chain day in and day out. So that will be quite changing for those that are headquartered overseas to use the technology to understand how manufacturers may be working on a daily basis. So that connections is one full circle. And this year's made it move faster because you need to. You can't actually physically fly to see what's going on. So you need to have adapted apps that can apply 5G technology.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I think we are out of time today, but I want to thank you all for a really interesting, really productive discussion. I think we raised a lot of incredibly interesting points about the state of the industry today and where it's going in the future. Any further questions, please do email us. You can also please visit our website at azalvoproject.com to learn more about the accelerator program and what we're doing with that. And on that note, we will wrap up today. Thanks so much to everyone who attended.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amit.
Thanks.